The row over racism at the palace intensifies today after Ngozi Fulani, the woman at the centre of the storm, told of her pain and the hurt over the way that she was grilled and interrogated about her heritage by none other than the godmother to Prince William, Lady Susan Hussey herself. The domestic abuse campaigner, who was at a reception hosted by Queen Consort Camilla, says she felt trapped and violated as Lady Hussey repeatedly asked where's she really from, including the words, "Where are your people from? And what part of Africa are you from?"
Well, the answer, as Ngozi Fulani is generally happy to explain, is that her parents came to London from the Caribbean. Most of their children, including Ngozi herself, were born here in the UK. She's brilliantly British through and through. Writing about her life and background on a website, Ngozi talks all about this and describes how her father taught her about her, quote, connection to Africa. She is, however, British, an answer that Lady Hussey seems strangely reluctant to accept. In their super awkward conversation on Tuesday night, the Queen's former lady-in-waiting repeatedly pressed her on her heritage, long after it was pretty clear that the line of questioning was causing offence. Now, for her ignorance, she has rightly resigned. The palace, which has spent so much of the last year countering Meghan Markle's allegations of racism and trying to work out just how the royals should respond to criticism of the UK's colonial past, must be horrified. They had absolutely no choice but to let her step down immediately.
So, the challenging question now, as we look forward, is whether Ngozi Fulani has done us all a tough but necessary favour by smoking out the possible latent institutional racism at the palace, or has she caused a great deal of damage to the monarchy, and has she ruined an elderly lady's life after half a century of service? And could there have been a different, better way to deal with all this? Was she right to call it out in the very public way that she has done? Or would it have been better to mention it privately, ensuring that real, genuine lessons were learnt without causing so much damage to one of our greatest, most precious institutions, so admired and respected around the world? How much slack really should be given to those of the elder generation, if any at all?
Well, she now says that she didn't want Lady Hussey to resign, but she is, after all, the one who put her name out there, knowing it would cause an absolute firestorm. My question is, would it have been better for the monarchy and kinder to an elderly lady of a different generation for her to have dealt with this controversy in a quieter, more private way?
Well, first up, let's just remind ourselves of that now infamous exchange, which we've had voiced by our producers.
Where are you from?
Sister Space.
No, where do you come from?
We're based in Hackney.
No, what part of Africa are you from?
I don't know, they didn't leave any records.
Well, you must know where you're from. I spent time in France. Where are you from?
Here, UK.
No, but what nationality are you?
I'm born here and I'm British.
No, but where do you really come from? Where do your people come from?
My people? Lady, what is this?
Oh, I can see I'm going to have a challenge getting you to say where you're from. When did you first come here?
Lady, I am a British national. My parents came here in the 50s when...
Oh, I knew we'd get there in the end. You're Caribbean.
No, lady, I'm of African heritage, Caribbean descent and British nationality.
Oh, wow. That is so hard to listen to, isn't it? Today, a former employee of the Crown Prosecution Service weighed in and said Lady Susan Hussey asked me my heritage once, although not repeatedly, and, quote, seemed to accept my answer. So I wonder, does the whole thing boil down to an elderly lady from a different generation getting it wrong and not really meaning any offence, or is it something more serious? Well, joining us now, our former royal butler to King Charles, who knows Lady Hussey well, Grant Harold, and Talk TV contributor Paula Roan-Adrian. Thank you for joining us, and plus a former head of royal protection, Dai Davies.
So, the race row couldn't have come couldn't have come at a worse time, could it? Grant, you know Lady Hussey. Is this not just a case of an elderly lady just slightly out of touch, nothing to see here?
It's really difficult because I knew Lady Susan very well while I was obviously working for the royal household, and even as a youngster, when I wrote to the Queen, she was the lady that wrote back, and she, as you've said, she's been a lady in waiting or a friend, confidant of the late Queen for many, many decades. So it was shocking and saddening to hear this, and you know, you can put it down to many things. Is it age? Is it not thinking what she's saying? It is confusing because they are in the palace. Things are done in such a strict way, and you know they always have to think about how they say things, what they're doing, how this has happened. I have no idea, and I can imagine. I think she'll be devastated that the way this has obviously come across, what's been said, because you can't take that back. But the positives, as I was saying to Paula, we were talking there about it, is that at least it has got a discussion going about it, which hopefully will stop anything like this happening again.
I mean, where does she go from here? She's 83 years old. Her name has been absolutely dragged through the mud. I get the impression you don't think she meant any offence whatsoever. How does somebody rebuild after this?
I don't think you can. I mean, the reality is most people at 83 have obviously retired. You know, the fact that she had, when the Queen passed, her duties obviously ceased. But recently, it was announced she'd be a lady of the household, so she did have a new role, and this was probably the first engagement in that role.
Let's bring Dai Davies into this conversation. Dai, thanks for being with us. So look, you know Lady Hussey. How surprised were you by these comments? Were you surprised at all? And do you think that it's been handled in the right way so far?
Well, a very good evening. May I first say I think it's all been blown entirely out of proportion. I think the media have gone berserk articulating this, and one has to say this is one version of the events. We haven't heard what Lady Hussey has to say. It's amazing how much of this conversation was recalled so expertly. So I really do think we have to take a balanced view on this. Some aspects of it clearly would cause somebody concern, but I also have some concern as to whether this was in one shape pre-planned. This lady, as I understand it, and I may be wrong, has had a number of occasions. Sorry, let me finish, please. She has on a number of occasions made some allegations against the royal family, particularly in respect of Meghan and other institutions. So I just wonder what on earth is going on.
Well, Dai, you said that we haven't heard from Lady Hussey. What we can say is that the palace has not disputed the account of Ngozi. That has not been questioned. So we have to say that there is a broad acceptance that that exchange took place. I think for you to say that it's been blown out of all proportion, many people will find quite objectionable, because clearly that exchange was very offensive to the lady concerned. How do you respond to that?
Well, it was to the lady concerned. Well, it may well have been to the lady concerned, and I am sorry if she felt so offended by an 83-year-old who has given exemplary service, travelled the world, spoken to literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people in receptions. I have to say, as a Welshman, when I first met her, she said, "Where do you come from, Mr. Davies?" And I said, "From North Wales, ma'am." So it's a question quite often members of the royal family and those in her position ask of people, particularly if they come to a reception dressed like somebody very beautifully from the Caribbean. Well, and I think she was just trying to probe. I don't see that she was being racist. She isn't racist as far as I know. And I frankly take exception to the fact that everybody is alleging she's racist on those comments. It may have been a confused conversation.
Thank you.
A lot of
I'm
other
going to bring
people
Paula
talking,
in because
she didn't hear.
Paula, is this a case of essentially one wrong 'un, an elderly lady who just hasn't caught up with the times, or do you think this proves that actually there is a degree of institutional racism within the institution of the royal family or the royal household itself?
So I just want to be able to say three things. The first is to Dai. I heard what he said, but what was interesting was that he acknowledged that there were parts of that conversation that were uncomfortable. And I'd be really intrigued to understand what part he considered to be uncomfortable. To answer your two questions, this isn't about a wrong-un. This isn't about an 83-year-old woman. This is about institutional racism. This is about something that I have spoken about previously and was told quite clearly that I was wrong. This is something that Harry and Meghan have spoken about and were vindictively chased, harangued, oppressed, being told that this is all wrong, that they've got this wrong. We know now that that's probably not true.
Well, we don't know that. We know that there has been one instance here of an elderly lady being, at least we can say, clumsy and ignorant in her phrasing.
But Isabel, you keep focusing on her age as if for some reason it's an excuse.
I think that's a material consideration, actually.
Would you not say that with age comes wisdom?
There.
Would you not say with age comes wisdom? And would you not say that this is a woman who has had opportunities far beyond those of many people that I know, who wouldn't dare espouse such ignorant and such and approach somebody who was a guest, an invited guest. So let's put racism to one side and just look at the lack of manners here.
Do you think she was just being curious, though? A lack of curiosity, I have to say, that you have displayed in Paula's amazing outfit here. Are we allowed to ask? Are we allowed to ask where you're from, Paula?
You're allowed to ask where I'm from, and when I answer you, you will accept my response.
Come on, then. Where are you from?
And when I tell you where my outfit is from, you will accept my response. You will not challenge me until I give you an answer that you find acceptable, and that's the difference. It's not about asking me where I'm from. It's not about asking me where my accent...
Not asking where your people are from.
or asking even about my people. Yes. It might make me wince, but I would understand that you were perhaps referencing my heritage.
So, Paula, how would you have dealt with it then if you had been at that reception and you had been on the receiving end of the exchange, the questioning, let's call it a bit of an interrogation by Lady Hussey, which is not perhaps how she meant it, but that might have been how you took it to be. How would you have responded, and would you have kicked off this level of fuss?
So that's a really interesting point, because it has taken me over 22 years before I was prepared to report the racism that I suffered at the bar as a barrister.
Right.
And I am really, really grateful to Miss Fulani for being brave enough to challenge what is the largest institution in our society, and that's royalty. And so I would like to think that I would have been brave enough to have done that, but I'm not sure I would.
And
because what's happening?
It's
victim blaming now. This is what's happening here.
No,
we are victim blaming. That's what Dai's done.
I think it is critical questioning of her account and what it actually means. Does it mean anything broader? And that's a really important question.
But we don't need to critically analyse her account, because
I
as
think
you
we need
rightly
to know whether
pointed
it
out,
means something broader or whether this is a one-off, unfortunate and really disappointing and, frankly, for the royal family, disastrous episode.
Unfortunately, I doubt it's a one-off. What I'm grateful about is that it's happened, is that it's gone public, and that we're now having these uncomfortable conversations. We need to have these uncomfortable conversations. We need to look internally.
I'm just going to bring in Dai. Dai, why hadn't Lady Hussey, frankly, learnt some lessons after the Harry and Meghan accusations? You'd have thought, with that wisdom that Paula referred to, she should have known better.
Well, let me just say again, she's got no previous convictions as far as I know. She's entitled to the presumption of innocence as to her motive, as your barrister should know. So what I say is, we only heard one alleged account. Now, it may be true, and to answer the question, was it uncomfortable? Yes, it was in part, and I wouldn't have asked those questions. I am curious where people come from. It's an interesting dialogue. We, as people who've been born here, when we see colourful people from other parts of the world, it is interesting how and why and where they came from, where their parents come.
You just used the word colourful people there, and you know, I watched Paula wincing. Richard and I were both...
Well, let me define colourful then. Hang on, as I use the word colourful, I mean attractive, vibrant, beautiful.
Let's not let you keep...
Covers so many different people
exotic.
from all around the world.
Should we just throw the word out there? Exotic.
I tell you what, Dai, because I brought up Harry and Meghan, let's just go to the clip of the extraordinarily timed promo from Harry and Meghan on Netflix. Here it comes.
Why did you want to make this documentary? and sees what's happening behind the closed doors. I had to do everything I could to protect my family.
When the stakes are this high, doesn't it make more sense to hear our story from us?
Wow, heart-stirring stuff. Paula, what do you make of that trailer?
It makes me tearful, to be
Does
quite
it?
like. Yeah, it really does, because
It's beautifully done.
It is beautifully done, and I appreciate that Meghan isn't everyone's cup of tea. You don't have to like me, but what I want to say to you is, don't dislike me just because of the colour of my skin.
You're feeling a sense of vindication because you've always stood up for Harry and Meghan. And that's fine. But would you have dealt with it in the same way? Would you have exposed the disinfectant of sunlight on this issue in the way that they have? And then let's bring in Grant after that.
I would have done. And as I said, I did this after many years with the Bar Council, who have been amazing, can I just say? The Bar Council have been amazing. However, to this day, I have grown-ups, adults, whose job it is to fight for people. That's my job. I speak up for people all the time. I couldn't speak up for myself. I was conditioned to be fearful. I don't want Grant to be conditioned to be fearful. I don't want you to be conditioned to be fearful. We need to have these conversations. We need to do it in a safe place, and people need to be able to say what's really on their minds.
And I assume that saying what's really on their minds is not calling colourful people. I mean, this is...
Look, you know what? Dai said what he did, and I can still have a conversation with Dai about that. And I can have a conversation with Dai about why I found it insulting. I don't speak for every single black person. There may be another black person here who says, Paula, come on.
I think we should let Dai have a response to this. Dai, do you just want to come back in here and just, you know, perhaps defend the choice of language that you used?
Well, yes, I'll use it again. I think it's a perfectly reasonable Welsh saying. We call people colourful, not because of the colour of their skin, because of the way they are, the way they dress. That's not racist. That's no way. I mean, come on, let's get real about this. I joined the police 5 years ago to protect and serve. I hate bullies. I've been a patron of Kidscape, protecting children, for 17 years until I retired. So I don't need lessons from anyone about service and being decent. I respect everybody has a point of view. I just happen to think we're overdoing some of this. Yes, I'm not black, but I have many black friends. My daughter-in-law has relatives that came from Africa and other parts. So no way will I accept any kind of inference from that language that I've just used. What I am saying is we are overdoing and overplaying all of this, in my humble opinion.
Thank you very much for that.